ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Here We Go Brownies podcast. I'm your host, Hysong, coming at you from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Join with me, Dustin, as always, out in Idaho, but we are blessed to have Dustin. We've got former Boise State defensive tackle Rob Ash on with us tonight. Rob, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Allie. Dustin, nice seeing you as always, man.
I know. It's like royalty, right, Rob?
Yeah.
So we're just so excited to have him on. We're going to pick his brain on the Browns defense. Of course, he sees things through a different set of eyes. Of course, he's got a different perspective as a former player than most Browns fans have the luxury of having, of course. So we're just really excited to have him on, pick his brain a little bit, and preview Browns versus Cowboys as we go into Week 4. But before we do so, Dustin, we have to give a little thank you to our good friends at onlyincleve.com. If you need your Browns merchandise, Indians, Ohio State, anything you need, Cleveland Cavaliers, you go check it out at onlyincleve.com.
Or
take it away.
Our new merchandise. Rob may not even realize this, but we now have Here We Go Brownies merch. We have our own line of shirts as of, 3 or 4 nights ago, in a brown or a gray. So hoodies, sweatshirts, we got it all now. So, and Rob, we also have some Boise Browns backer shirts out there on the same site. So I'll have to send you the link. So, yeah, we're really excited, obviously, with our sponsor, Only Incleve.
onlyincleve.com. Go check them out. So let's get right into it. We've got a lot to cover. But first and foremost, Rob, how you doing out there? How are things on your end?
It's good, man. Boise is Boise. We're starting back up with our football season, so our fans and this community is kind of rallying back up. There's hope again, and so nothing's more important in Boise than the Boise State Broncos. So we're pretty excited to get that season going again. For sure.
Well, and the schedule came out today, so we've got.
I saw like 10,000 notifications, and people are retweeting and
and we got our wish. We got number 18 BYU on the schedule for November 7th.
It's gonna be pretty good.
The number 8 in the country right now.
18, not 8.
Okay, I was like, wow, that's a big deal.
I would love that if they were number 8. That would definitely help us out. But 18 still, anytime you can get a ranked team is good.
Absolutely. Sure. I think we're all just excited. Football's back. We're back in action. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. But Rob, let's get started. I'm really curious. Seems like you've had quite the journey, right? Yeah. You start out in California, if I'm not mistaken. You make it over to Boise State, but you're wearing a Browns jersey.
Yeah.
How's all that happen?
Yeah. So originally from Elk Grove, California, born and raised. And my dad is actually from Cleveland, Ohio. So he's from the Shaker Heights area. I'm pretty sure it's what it's called, of Cleveland. And obviously, as you guys know, if you have anybody in your family, any of your parents, grandparents who are Browns fans or anything Cleveland related, you're just born into it. So I remember being raised in, the Cavaliers jerseys and the Indians hats and the Browns jerseys, and going to school being made fun of because, being in Sacramento, it's Niner country, it's Raider country, but, we were the good old Brownies. And so it's kind of this what it was. My dad was a born in, born out Cleveland guy, so was I.
Well, and I was going to say, Shaker Heights, I call that old money. It's the older, kind of more established. It reminds me of that older historic neighborhoods.
Yeah, he's like right outside of Shaker Heights. That's the only part of town I kind of remember. It's super nice, but like he's also about 10 minutes east of that. So I forget the exact town he lives in. It's Cleveland. He's like inner city Cleveland area, I guess. So not too far from the stadium.
Yep.
It's funny because, like you said, if you have a family member, a cousin, a friend, Dustin, anybody who is a diehard Browns fan, it just rubs off on you. It's in your.
I told you about my trip. I told you my trip to Oregon this weekend, Rob. Literally, I'm at Crater Lake, and people just magnetize towards you. And then I'm in Bend, Oregon, and people are like, "Hey, I'm just moved here." And then these girls were in a crowd, and they were going out to this bar, and they're like, "Hey, I'm in here to see my girlfriend this weekend. We're all from Cleveland." And, we all went to the same school. And I'm like, it's just, if you're a Browns fan, they really magnetize towards you because it's not like a Packers or Cowboys. They're like, oh, that guy's got to be loyal.
I was in D.C. this past weekend, and I kid you not, I'm at the Capitol building taking pictures, being extra touristy, and this old guy, like 80 years old, Brownies hat on. And I'm like, oh, dog pound. He goes, oh. It's like, he barked at me. This 80-year-old dude is walking down the Capitol Mall. It was barking after I say dog pound, and so that was pretty cool, man.
That's how you know. It's, I mean, like I said,
Die hard.
when you have it in your blood, it's just who you are. It's in your DNA, and it always will be. Browns fans, we know this. You know, it's a true, it's a pack. You know, it's just great. It's good to be a Browns fan, especially when we have a winning record for the first time since 2014, which is
Is that
just
right?
crazy to think. It's just crazy to think.
That's nuts, but yeah.
It's nuts. Okay, but anyways, we'll get into all that. We'll get into all of it. But Rob, I want to hear a little bit about your backstory. We know you were a defensive tackle, I believe, at Boise State.
Right. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what that's like. You know, who you've played with. I know you've got some good guys on your resume. Let's hear it.
Yeah, so I was from California, got recruited by Coach Pete himself, and at this time, the number 2 in the country, and obviously you know the whole story of Boise State and the wide right and Colin Kaepernick and Nevada and the whole UNR thing and the field goal post. So I ended up coming to Boise 2011. We were still, you know, one of the top teams in the country, and was able to really live in those moments of when Boise State was really, you know, the top dog, the Cinderella team. You know, during those, I played 3 years with Coach Pete and then 2 with Hysong. So I was one of the transition players, which is a pretty cool testimony for me to say, hey, you know, I've had both Coach Pete and Coach Hysong as my coach. So when I first came to Boise State, it was wild. I mean, I had Doug Martin as running back. I had Kellen Moore as quarterback. I had all these like big time names, and you know, Matt Paradis was playing center. Charles Leno, who plays for the Bears, was playing tackle. So Matt plays for the Panthers right now. So we had all these like amazing. I mean, DeMarcus Lawrence, Tyrone Crawford. We had all these Billy Wins. All these big time names are, you know, at Boise State. And so me getting there, like, oh my gosh, this is like my dream come true. Like we are an NFL team of Idaho. Like I've made it. And this to kind of just recognize, like, man, I play with some amazing players, and you know, I played and practiced, and we hit helmets together, and it's a pretty cool like experience to see my teammates, you know, playing the NFL, and here I am here talking about them. So it's a pretty cool deal.
It is pretty cool. We're just so happy to have you. I think it's really going to be interesting to get your perspective, especially with what the Browns are doing. Go ahead, Dustin. Let's kick it off here. Of course, I want to dive headfirst into what the Browns have done so far. We're of course going into week 4. We've seen 3 games so far, and of course they've looked different each and every game. Dustin, why don't you take it away here? I want to get some information, get some perspective, give me some wisdom, Rob, on what's going on the defensive side of the football.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dust.
Yeah, as I say, so I think you have a very interesting perspective. You know, you played defensive, you know, nose guard. You know, you played along the line there. Looking with the Myles Garrett's and our defensive line, obviously it's one of our strengths on our football team. And it kind of, if you look at the way we play, it kind of, whatever the defensive line does in a game for the Browns usually is the way it dictates how well the defense does. Yeah. So I always find it fascinating and fun watching football games with you on Sunday, because I'm looking at it from a fan's perspective, and you're yelling at the TV like, man, you blew your spot. Like, I mean, you're like, come on, man. And like, I like that perspective. So what do you see from week 1 to week 3 and now going into week 4? What have you seen specifically from like being a former athlete, how you look at through a different lens than a typical fan would look at it?
Yeah, I think what's special about me as well, I actually played a whole year at Boise State as on the O-line. So I can kind of see, both. So my favorite thing right now is the phrase is games are won and lost up front in the front 7. You know, from the tight ends down to the D ends, you can really see how a game's going to play out. Obviously, we'll start off with defense, right? I love the pressure we see when it comes to our defensive line and our gap integrity, meaning that we don't have players who are trying to do too much or they're not carrying their weight. You can really hold them accountable that they're going to do their job. You know, and that's one of the most important things when you're playing a specific position like the D line. So you're doing your job. You know, you're not losing your containment of a quarterback. You're not pushing too far upfield so he can get behind you, but you're doing what you're called to do. And you know that you know your teammate is going to do what he's supposed to do as well. And so you really see that, like, the defense of the Browns, they just play really sound football. You don't see them missing a ton of tackles or blowing their assignments, which is super helpful. Obviously, we know that our secondary is hurting with injuries and just the whole shebang. That's when the D-line really has to get pressure on the quarterback and really get after him and just cause mayhem, because if you leave the quarterback on his own for too long, these DBs, let's just be honest, they're younger, they're a little bit undersized, they're going to struggle more. So it's really up to the defensive line to really set the example and the tone up front. Also, if you noticed, and I love this, we have Nick Chubb is doing amazing things.
Mm-hmm.
It's unreal. Like, he's won the games for us, in my personal opinion. But his O-line has been dominant up front, giving time and giving the space for our running backs to run the ball extremely. I mean, it is unheard of to have these many yards in 3 games.
So with that said, Rob, how impressed are you with Jedrick Wills being a rookie at left tackle this year? I mean, that's one of the things that just stands out to me.
Was he from Alabama? Was that where he's from? Yeah. I mean, obviously, Alabama, you have competition like no other. But to have a short, almost no time practicing, right, and to get thrown into this crazy pandemic season of NFL versus still the best players,
right?
You have to show up, and he's done, a pretty decently good job, especially for not having any time. I think he's done a great job. I'm a little biased. I'm a Browns fan, so what can I say?
Not only so much Big Jed. Yeah. I mean, of course, he's looked fantastic. And then you have Joel right next to him, who I think really helps his learning, right? You've got Joel and JC who can really assist with that learning curve, especially at the left side of the offensive line with Big Jed. But I want to shine a little bit light on the right side of that line with Wyatt Teller right now, who I think has been an absolute standout, especially in the run game. You see a lot of those like guard pulls, and he's opening a lot of lanes for Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. What do you think with him? Because I know coming into the season, there was a lot of question marks with that right guard situation. Who's going to fill that role? In my opinion, he's really stepped up. What are your thoughts in that right guard position? Is that a position that you look at next offseason saying, hey, we need an answer here? Or is this an extension for Wyatt Teller?
I mean, I think my biggest thing when you see an offensive lineman is his ability to finish plays. Even in the midst of making mistakes or being a little too aggressive, I love it. Mm-hmm. If you can see a right guard who's usually your pulling guard or your downfield running guard or your double team guard, being able to finish defensive linemen, I think you're doing a fantastic job. Obviously, I think there's also fruit in the yards you see with his running backs. You can say it's because the running backs are amazing, or you can say it's because the O-line is also doing their job. So, for me to say it's a huge need, I would say we have other needs on our defensive side and our secondary, but you never know. It is the NFL, and there's always talent coming and going. So,
do you put more of an emphasis on what Bill Callahan has brought to the table, or do you think it's more of the raw and sheer talent of the offensive line? Or in my eyes, I think it's more of a marriage of the two. What are your thoughts there?
I think coaching always makes a huge difference. Sure. Like you said, it's been the first winning season or winning record in how long? And it's also probably the best we've seen our running backs do probably ever. Mm-hmm. I think it has to do with coaching, talent, and honestly, it's kind of a season for the Browns to step up. We have, in my personal opinion, we have the best talent on paper offensively. With our receiving corps, with our running backs and our tight ends. That's not common. And so I think our offense has that fire under them, and it's really saying, you know what, if we want to be able to play in this league against these opponents like the Ravens and the Steelers, who are, my goodness, they're a great team, and then Joe Burrows and the Bengals who are coming up, we have to show up and show off. So,
quick question I have for you, Rob. So I just thought about this. Did you and Joel Petonio cross paths ever when he was at UNR and you were at Boise State?
Actually thinking about it, what year was he there?
I'll tell you.
He's only been in the league about 5 years.
I think he came out in 2014.
So I finished at Boise State 2015 was my last year. So we Had to. I don't remember, honestly, which is kind of crazy. I mean, because
I just thought about that. You probably played against him.
we've had amazing. From Colorado State's offensive line, which I think 5 of them in the 2013 season went to the league. We've had some amazing opponents, but Big Joe he's the man. He's been crushing it for sure.
No, he's been a lot of fun to watch. That offensive line has just been so much fun to watch, and that's been the highlight of me. I bought into the offensive line hype as soon as.
Well, Allie could do a whole show just on offensive lines.
I love it.
I love it. Give the boys some attention, man. They don't get enough love up front. We gotta give these linemen some love, man. They're big and sexy, so we gotta feed them up. They're making the moves for us, So. Yeah.
Well, I think it starts and ends with them offensively speaking, right? I think
sure.
Really it goes towards what Kevin Stefanski's been able to run schematically. You see a lot of discipline, and I think that comes with coaching with Bill Callahan, of course, Kevin Stefanski. But there's just so much talent there. You've got 2 of the best backs in the league, and then that just absolute brick wall of an offensive line. It's just been so much fun to watch. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. But let's flip it over to the other side of the football, talk a little bit of defense, because, of course, all lights are shining bright on Myles Garrett, who's had a heck of a season so far, strip sack last week. I think he's obviously going to show out in Dallas. He's coming home to put on a show. But hopeful that Olivier will be returning. Same with Baker. So it's going to be a big game for a lot of these guys. But I want to give a little love, too, to the defensive line. What are your thoughts right now? At this point in time, we're hopeful that Olivier can return on Sunday. I think that would be huge. But I still think guys like Porter Gustin have been able to step up in the face of adversity and really take the bull by the horns.
And that's, you just said it right there. Their ability to step up. We call it carrying the flag, right? When one player goes down, you don't see a gap in performance. Mm-hmm. And I think it is probably one of the coolest things to watch, and they're called stunts. We call them games on the D line, right? It's when a defensive tackle will pick off the offensive tackle's hip. You'll see Myles Garrett go under that little pick move, and man, the Browns D line, they are phenomenal at running games and twists and stunts. Honestly, it's fun to watch, and it's the consistency of their play, and like I said before, their ability to do their job is, man, it's bar none.
Yeah. What are your thoughts right now? I know a lot of love gets shown to the defensive ends, but Sheldon Richardson has absolutely been a man out there. And I want to give love to Larry Ogunjobi and Jordan Elliott, who's been impressive as well. What are your thoughts in the middle of that defensive line?
How has Myles Garrett been doing?
Exactly.
Exactly. So obviously, people on the inside are getting the attention deserved because Myles Garrett has had one-on-one time. And that only happens when you have D linemen in the interior who can do their job and take up 2 gaps, and they can play both the guard and the center and take on double teams and still get in the backfield. Talk about a job right there, right? I did it in college. I'm not in the NFL, but I can just imagine how hard it is to get double teamed by these 2 big old linemen and still have to do your job. They're crushing it.
I agree. I completely agree. Dustin, what do you think?
Well, as I say, let's pivot a little bit. So we went into this a little earlier, Rob. So before we started this, you said you're torn for this football game on Sunday. Why don't you go ahead and rattle off all the people literally that are on that football team or are coaching and making the decision this weekend that you have actually played with at your time at Boise State, which is kind of phenomenal. And then why don't you go into a little bit of the mystique of how, for whatever reason, Dallas loves Boise State football players, including offensive coordinators, and how that has all transcended down to Dallas and what kind of, from a recruiting standpoint, when those guys come to Boise State, and why is that still being that tree, years later, they keep picking Boise State players?
Yeah. The Boise State, Cowboys, right? I played with, starting off Kellen Moore, he's the coach, right? Played with Marcus Henry, who's on the practice squad on the old line. I played with DeMarcus Lawrence. We called him Tank when he came in. He was a hoot to play with, man. Tyrone Crawford, man, the Canadian monster. This dude was a freak when we were playing in college. I think Cedric is also there. I think he scored his first touchdown this past week, and that was super cool to see.
He had a heck of a game, yeah.
Yeah, and it's actually really funny. I kid you not, I was just running in my room to get my ring to show you guys, and I had some Boise State socks, and it had number 4 on it, which was Darian's number when we were playing in college. It was like, I still have DT socks because we were locker mates. And so we used to end up with socks and you mismatch everything. And so it's like, oh, some of DT socks right there. So Darian is also playing for the Cowboys. So about six of these guys.
And then you've got Leighton Vander Esch.
Oh, yeah, and Leighton. How do I forget about Leighton?
Him.
I know Leighton right now is probably recovering from some injuries. So man, my prayers are out to him and his wife for a speedy recovery. I can only imagine how tough that is to see your boys play on Sunday and you're not there. But Leighton's a monster.
Yeah. And I think it's collarbone, right? I think 6 to 8 weeks out with the collarbone.
Yes, collarbone.
Yeah. Now, Rob, I'm trying to remember, did you have any injuries throughout your
knee surgery, man? I'm just an old dude, but it's all good.
So tell me, I think you rattled off quite a few, not just like guys on the practice squad, like some very significant personalities, for the Dallas Cowboys. And first and foremost, Kellen Moore, he's the play caller. The offense kind of starts and ends with him. What's he going to do? Is he going to put Dak and Zeke and all of those guys in a position to win? But then you've got DeMarcus on the defensive side of the ball that will absolutely make, Jed's day probably pretty hard.
I just want to highlight real fast how scary the Cowboys defensive line really is. I mean, the return of Alden Smith, which I've been told I look just like him. So shout out Alden, rocking the jersey. I love it, man. But no, I mean, having Tyrone and then having DeMarcus and then an amazing talent like Alden coming back and rocking it. It's a pretty big deal for the Cowboys. But like you said, Kellen Moore on the play calling side. You guys should have seen how cool it was to sit down at a meeting and watch film of Kellen Moore, like doing things and throwing the ball before people were even running. I mean, Kellen Moore is just a brilliant football kind of guy. And he's what Boise State's all about, high football intelligence, and just the blue collar, outwork every single person on that field mentality.
So I think it's clear, you outlined, obviously, the Browns are going to have their hands full with this Cowboys defense, especially the front seven. How can the Browns win? What's a key to a victory, especially offensively speaking? What does Baker and Kevin Stefanski and Nick Chubb, what do they have to do to beat the Cowboys?
I think obviously I'm not a head coach or I'm not an offensive coordinator, but if I was to be in that film room, I think the most important thing you would see is just the domination of the front line. Mm-hmm. I think like you said earlier, Ali, it starts and ends with the O-line. And if we see Nick Chubb carry the ball 20 times this game and get over 200 yards, it's going to be hard to not see a W at the end of the game.
Not only that, because you're taking the ball out of Dak's hands, who has been he's got a ton of weapons and he's been phenomenal up until this point. They can and will throw it on you.
Yeah, one of the things I thought was interesting, Rob, is they've had the defense for Dallas has given up a lot of yards. I think they're the 26th overall ranked defense, and I believe Dallas is number 1 ranked offense. So it'll be interesting. But you have Cleveland, I think, is ranked top 10 defense. I think number 9.
I think you might be correct. I don't have it in front of me.
So it'll be interesting to see that kind of matchup.
Sure.
Can we kind of, Allie and I talked about this previously. I kind of can almost see a shootout because, to your point, Rob, these offenses have kind of had the advantage going in these first few weeks to where Dak may be able to throw it around a lot. So may Baker.
I would argue that to win the game, you can't have a shootout with the Dallas Cowboys. Mm-hmm. Obviously, because I would say if you look at rushing yards and time of possession, right, the Cowboys are able to score so quickly. So how do you beat them? Don't allow them to have the ball. You run the ball first, second, third down if necessary, right? You can go for it on 4th down, and you just run it down their throats the entire first, second half. They can't score. Your defense holds up one time. You're good to go. So,
yeah, it's interesting you bring that up. I thought one of the keys to the victory would be an early turnover that ends up being a score for the Browns would be a good trend setter for the game. If you can get a turnover, it turns into points and kind of have Dallas play from behind, and to your point, then Cleveland can build a lead and start running the ball and start controlling and not giving Dak so many possessions. I think that could be a key to victory.
That's actually a really good point. I never thought about it. I mean, if the Cowboys come in, scoring 14-0, that definitely changes the game plan for the Browns. It'd be a lot harder because obviously we know Baker's kind of struggled in the air. As OBJ said, it's going to be a different kind of season for him when it comes to his numbers and his yardage. So we know that the Browns' strength is their running game, and it's hard to have a running game when you're down 14 points.
I was saying on the other end of that, we get a defensive touchdown where we score 7 points, and then we do that. I think that could become very, very interesting how that turns out. So,
Dustin, you mentioned that the Cowboys are number 1 ranked offense. Could part of that be because they've been down in so many games that they have to shoot their way back, that they have they have to pass the ball. They can't rely on Zeke. Now, the thing with Mike McCarthy, if you look back in his previous regime, in Green Bay, he had Aaron Rodgers. He had Brett Favre for a period of time. He comes into Dallas. He's got Dak. He's got to put the emphasis on him when previously it was more so on Zeke. What can Zeke do for us? But now it's, hey, let's give Dak the football. He'll beat you with his legs. But he can and will throw it all over the place because they've got 3-4 with Cedric on there. Really good receivers. So, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. Tell me this, Rob. We'll get you out of here on this one. We won't take up too much of your time. We know it's valuable. But give me your score prediction for Sunday, Week 4, Dallas Cowboys versus the Cleveland Browns.
We were talking prior, and I was like, man,
not that any of those 6 or 7 people may ever see this. They probably will. Just saying.
No, it's a hard one because I want my boys, I want my family to for sure win and come back home with a W. So honestly, it's kind of like I want my teammates to be victorious for sure. But man, I think watching the Dallas Cowboys play last week and seeing them throw the ball like that and knowing our secondary's hurting a little bit. I would say, and this might make the Brownies a little bit upset, I would say it's going to be 42-24 Cowboys. Man.
Whoa.
That is electric. That is a high-scoring game.
It's a high-scoring game. It's a scary scoring game. Let me tell you what we're going to see, though. Let me tell you what we're going to see. We're going to see Nick Chubb, man, put his name down in the history this year for sure as probably the best running back in the country.
So did you say the Cowboys are going to win 42-24?
Yeah. Just kidding. Come on, man. We're believe land, man. Come on, 42-24. Let's put it down to the Browns and say why not.
Now we're on board.
If we come back to Cleveland with a 42-24 win, I think
watch out.
Yeah.
Watch out.
What are you guys thinking? What do you got, Allie? What's your?
So I actually went. I'm actually going to go in a different route. I'm going to go with the Browns win. However, I think that the Cowboys are a really, really good football team. They're still struggling to find their identity at this point in time. But one thing that I said this offseason was I don't think these defenses around the league are going to get their feet under them until week 4, week 5, week 6 because of the limited padded practices. You're just going to have some rust. So I said week 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, you're going to have some pretty high scoring games. Week 4, 5, 6, you might see it come down a little bit. So I'm actually, Dustin, I forget what my prediction was last night, but I think it was something along the lines of like Browns 27, Cowboys 24.
Yeah, and mine was, and I went a little higher, Rob. I was 34-31 with the Browns eking out a field goal or about a 2 to 3 point win, somewhere in that 30-28.
Yeah, listen, guys, if you're watching this right now, I am not in fantasy. I'm not in betting on games. Do not count my score prediction for anything besides me being ridiculous. Okay,
that's what we do here.
I like ridiculous. I mean, I was 100-2. Who knows?
Well, and here's the truth, Rob. I mean, you played with all those guys. They're friends of yours. I mean, they're personal friends, and just like you see these athletes where they have parents where their kids play on 2 different college football teams, and they go to a college football game and they're playing each other. Like, who do the parents root for? I kind of feel like you're kind of in that boat, like, hey,
the parent roots for the band.
Yeah.
The best band performance of all time. Best halftime. Come on.
Well, for you, I think it's a win-win situation, right? If the Browns win, we're happy about that. But of course, if it's the other way around, I won't even put it out there because we don't want it to happen. But you get to see, your friends and have
For
them
sure.
succeed, which is great. But other than that, this is great. I love gaining a little. I feel smarter. Having you on learn a little bit more. That's what we want to have on this podcast. We want to be informative, but we want to be entertaining, and we appreciate your time.
And Rob, am I going to see you this Sunday? This Sunday?
You know it, man. You know it.
All right.
I'll see you at
Beef O'Brady.
Beef O'Brady. Beef O'Brady. I'm a huge fan of the chicken wings, though. So
check them out. Go get the chicken wings at Beef O'Brady. I might need to come out to Boise. I'm telling you.
Come on out to Boise.
Coming out to Boise. We're gonna go get some chicken wings.
That's the little picture right there. It's a nice little place. Nice little town.
Well, I told Allie next year for sure, but she needs to come out and tailgate and do the whole, because I have a tailgate spot. I think you've been by my spot, Rob, multiple times. But yeah, so watching the game on the blue. I mean, you've been to a Buckeyes game, right, Allie? Clearly,
yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like the shoe, but it's, Rob will say this, teams that are really good have come in there and said, man, it's something about this weird blue turf. We can't win here, right?
I will tell you right now, it is one of the craziest experiences because I feel like our fans, we don't do this. Mm-hmm. They are right here the entire time. And it's a cool sight to see. The blue turf has its own mystique about it, man. And we don't like to lose there. We defend our home territory. So I love it.
Add to the list. Bucket list us. I'm going to make it happen. But with that, guys, we thank our good friend Rob Ash. Of course, we want to encourage you guys to go check out our friends at onlyincleve.com. Go get you guys some Here We Go Brownies merch. Just came out in a nice brown shirt. Of course, you can get it in gray, brown, whatever you need. They've got your back at onlyincleve.com. Guys, this was great. I really appreciate your time. And you are always welcome back at the Here We Go Brownies podcast.
Thank you.
Rob, thanks for tonight, and go Browns.
Go Browns. As always, guys, stay safe, stay healthy, and go Browns.